Hello everyone, and welcome to our program, Food Allergies and Schools, keeping students safe and ready to learn. My name is Brent Gann and I will be the moderator throughout this webcast. Data suggests that food allergies seem to be on the rise today. Some of these allergens, when ingested, can result in life-threatening reactions. Risks associated with food allergies can affect a student's total school environment, from bus rides to cafeterias to classrooms and playgrounds. It's a vast systems issue. But is your school district as a whole really prepared to prevent and deal with food allergies and potentially life-threatening reactions? Do you have the policies and protocols in place that all responsible adult staff are confidently equipped with the knowledge and skills to prevent food allergy reactions and respond to them effectively in the event of an emergency? Does your district work with registered nurses? Are your students supportive of each other and taking precautions to help their peers with food allergies? What about parents and the role they play in keeping all students safe and ready to learn? This webcast is designed to help you, school boards, administrators, and other school leaders, navigate some questions and the complexities around this issue and take recommended steps to manage food allergies in a coordinated and comprehensive manner. The questions you submitted when you registered for this webcast directly informed the development of the questions for our panelists. Please note that we won't be able to answer all the questions and circumstances you raised, but we hope that the information we provide responds to your needs and that you will learn more about why it's essential that every student with a life-threatening food allergy has an appropriate plan in place and what it means for schools to be ready to implement them. If you're watching our program live today and have a question or comment at any time, simply type it in the box on your screen and hit the submit button. Please include your name and location. Our time is limited, but we'll do our best to respond to as many questions as possible. Posted on your screen, you will see a list of the panelists. Click on the link next to this window to access this list. The webcast will involve 3 different groups of panelists. We'll share more resources near the close of the webcast. Information including PowerPoint slides shown today will be provided to all who registered for the live event. These items will also be accessible on the websites of both the National School Boards Association and the Education Solutions Global Network. You will receive a request to submit your evaluation of the program. This webcast is supported by the Division of Adolescent and School Health at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and is being produced by the National School Boards Association in cooperation with the Education Solutions Global Network, a service of the Missouri School Boards Association. The first segment of our program will help define food allergy from a clinical perspective and provide an overview of the importance of addressing food allergies in schools. It's now my pleasure to introduce our first panel. Stefano Luccioli, a physician who works as a senior medical advisor in the Office of Food Additive Safety at the Food and Drug Administration, and Pete Hunt, who is the lead health scientist within the Research and Application Branch of the Division of Adolescent and School Health at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Gentlemen, welcome, and thanks very much for being with us. Stefano, let's start with you if we could. What is a food allergy and what makes it different from other problematic food reactions?
Well, Brent, it's important to note that adverse food reactions can occur from many causes. They can be intolerances or toxic food reactions in most cases. Food allergic reactions represent a small minority of these reactions, and they are immune-mediated, which means they trigger the immune system. And that means they are specific to specific proteins and can also cause to insensitive individuals. When we talk about food allergy or we say peanut allergy, we are talking mainly about IgE-mediated food reactions. I want to put, if you can look at the screen here, and give you a few points. There are 2 phases to a food allergic reaction. Sensitization, where the individual makes IgE antibody to a food protein that they shouldn't. When the food is reintroduced again, you get reactivity. It's important to note that these are 2 separate phases, that you may get sensitization without reactivity and reactivity without sensitization, and that this type of reaction is very immediate, can lead to systemic responses and usually occur within minutes. So you will see these reactions occurring in schools when students eat food by accident. However, in some cases, they're difficult to predict because you could get few cells reacting at some point, or you could cause a cascade of effects, leading to more severe reactions.
And Stefano, what are the symptoms and life-threatening complications that can result from a food allergy?
This is the face, unfortunately, of a child with food allergic reaction. It's important to note that the most common reactions are skin-related reactions, as this child has welts on his body and swelling of the lips. However, you don't have to get these types of reactions with a food allergy. They can involve other systems of the body, the GI tract, and when they start involving the respiratory or cardiovascular system, such as symptoms of wheezing, throat tightening, feeling faint, or even feeling that something's wrong. These are kind of emergency situations which may signal a more imminent systemic process called anaphylaxis. And here this unfortunate individual with the mottled skin is getting emergency care. Anaphylaxis occurs in approximately 20% of food allergic reactions. And of course, if not treated, can be fatal. We don't have much evidence of actual cases of anaphylaxis in schools, but we know that food-induced anaphylaxis can occur, cause 30,000 ER visits, and roughly about 100 deaths a year in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And Stefano, in the event of a food allergy reaction, what emergency response should be provided?
Well, many food allergic reactions are mild and will go away transiently without any treatment. However, it's those food allergic reactions that are showing signs of anaphylaxis that need to be treated immediately, and the medication of choice is epinephrine, which is basically adrenaline, and it's usually supplied as an auto-injector that kids should have in school or carry with them and be administered on the first signs of anaphylaxis. In many times, you may need more than one dose of epinephrine. Therefore, it is advisable that you seek emergency care immediately. And also in a third of these cases, you can get reactions later on, so they should go to the emergency room. And other things that could be done because of the fear of cardiovascular collapse, you should have the patient lie down with the legs up to increase blood flow to the heart and brain, and go from there.
Mm-hmm. And Stefano, what are some common examples of food allergens? How common are food allergens in children, and how can allergies change over time?
You can see from the graph here, I'm going to show you some prevalence data on food allergens. It's important to note that many foods can cause food allergy. Over 170 different foods have been associated with IgE-mediated food reactions. However, these are probably the 8 most common foods in the United States that are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration as major food allergens. These include, and you can see from this graph, I've divided in prevalence data between children and adults, that the most common food allergies in probably school-age children are milk, egg, peanut, soy, and wheat. You can also see that probably in preschool children, milk and egg are much more common than peanuts. But as time goes on, you should note that milk and egg tend to be outgrown. So therefore, probably by end of school, peanuts tends to be one of the more, and tree nuts tend to be some of the more common food allergens of concern. When you're talking about total prevalence in the U.S. population, for each individual allergen, the prevalence is usually less than 1%, total for about 3%. A recent study by the CDC showed that about 3.9% of kids had food allergies.
Mm-hmm. All right, Pete, why should schools be prepared to deal with food allergies?
Well, Brent, there's going to be kids in schools with food allergies, and so everybody should be prepared for that. And even though we don't have the studies to show that the percentage of anaphylaxis cases that occur in schools, anaphylaxis is also a high probability. Schools need to be prepared because they have a responsibility to care for the health and safety of their children, and they also have a responsibility to demonstrate the understanding and acceptance of students with differences that we expect others to respect in our community at large. It's oftentimes that the first food allergy reaction will happen at schools, and schools need to be prepared to deal with that, both to help and support the families who are experiencing this as well as to deal with the students' health needs. It's important that we understand that many fatalities occur actually as a result of the delay in provision of epinephrine and in providing effective effective emergency services. And so it's often important for schools to be able to be prepared to deal with those two effectively. While food allergies may not be immediately evident, there may be many students with other health conditions, and asthma is a good example of other health chronic condition in which food allergies may be a complicating factor. So to be prepared to deal with many chronic conditions, they should also be prepared to address food allergies. And it's not always just the food allergy per se in which people need to be able to be ready for, but it's also the unique social and emotional factors that go along with that often complicates the child's life and learning. The issues of social isolation, as they may feel, the bullying they may be experienced, those sorts of things also have more to do with lost time and lost attention in school than sometimes the food allergy itself.
Right. And Stefano, it seems to me I've heard a lot more about food allergies in recent years. Are food allergies actually on the increase? Does the data back that up?
Well, that's a good question, Brent. You have to, I think, sort out what is a perceived food allergy from true food allergies. I still think that the data would suggest that true food allergies, especially for some food allergens like peanut, have increased over the past 20 years. The CDC study that I mentioned found an 18% increase in food allergies from 1997 to 2007. With regards to, and the reasons for this, we don't know. Allergies are increasing to many other, allergic rhinitis, asthma have been increasing as well. Could it be due to the way we're processing our foods or others? We don't know. With regards to perceived food allergy, as you said, there is an increased awareness of food allergies, and this probably has led to a certain extent of overdiagnosis or over-reporting. Many epidemiological studies that have shown, or have interviewed people who suspect to have a food allergy, only in 1 in 4 cases has that allergy been confirmed. So there is over-reporting. And of course, if you look at sensitization, just IgE sensitization, you can have over-reporting because many of those cases may not be true clinically reactive.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned epinephrine as a way to cope with an allergy attack. Is there any evidence of over-prescribing of that in schools?
Well, epinephrine is a good question. I mean, I'm not sure about any specific data, but there has been an increase in students presenting to schools with food allergies, and as part of their action plans will have epinephrine prescribed. The problem is when you have a diagnosis of food allergy, a lot of physicians will prescribe an EpiPen, more just because there are risks. Even if you've never really had a true food allergic reaction or a severe one, you could always have one if you eat enough of the food. Mm-hmm. So that's a justification. Plus epinephrine has no contraindications, so it's given fairly safely to students and so forth. Mm-hmm. However, from the other side, though, you have to look at data in people who have had severe allergic reactions who have presented to emergency rooms. And many times, 1 in 4 of those cases receive an epinephrine prescription. So you could also have students at school who are at risk without an epinephrine.
Uh-huh. Is it difficult for physicians to predict life-threatening food allergies?
Yes, it's very difficult. What our diagnostic tools help us determine who has a food allergy by typical symptoms and evidence of IgE to that specific food. This testing does not help us predict who is more likely to have a more severe reaction when they eat a food or what dose that's going to cause their reaction. Some physicians, mostly in clinical centers, do food challenges to help people understand what their risks are, but still, these challenges don't help them understand if they eat too much, what that risk will be.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, the diagnosis of a food allergy has a great impact on the child, but that reaches to the entire family, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, I think many studies have shown that the quality of life of both individuals with food allergies and their families is diminished. I think a lot of it has to do with the fear that you may have a fatal reaction and not know about it leads to a lot of avoidance of social gatherings and lead to social isolation. Plus, it is potentially fatal disorder and can be associated with quality of life issues just because of that.
Pete, are there any national standards or recommendations for schools to follow in addressing food allergies?
Well, Brent, right now there are not. There's not one set of national guidance to be able to do that, and that's one of the things that we're trying to work on at CDC and over the next year. There are many states that have established guidance for addressing food allergies for students in schools, and there are also a number of national non-governmental organizations and even some other federal agencies along with CDC who are working on some sort of that have some consensus strategies for addressing food allergies in schools.
Mm-hmm. So absent these national standards, what are the most essential steps schools should take in addressing and being better prepared?
Well, as I put up on the screen, I'll talk about 6 main components that are a part of a management for any chronic conditions, but directly address here to food allergies. It's important that schools establish a positive and receptive schooling climate, both among parents, among school staff, and also among students that accepts those with food allergies and other chronic conditions that may be different from the mainstream students. They also need to be able to use a coordinated approach that involves all of school staff. Addressing food allergies in schools is not a single individual's responsibility, it's a whole school's responsibilities. And they need to have a plan for addressing, for being ready to respond to those students who are not diagnosed, but need to be able to put individual health care plans and emergency care plans in places for those students who are diagnosed and recognized as having a food allergy. They need to implement practices that minimize exposure, that prevent exposure to students to the food allergens, and that's whether it has to do with food service, whether it has to do with the classroom, whether it has to do with on field trips and in other areas of the school setting. It's important that school staff be trained to respond, to recognize and respond to food allergy incidents when they occur. That's just being generally aware of food allergy signs and symptoms, but also for key staff to be aware and trained to be able to respond quickly to the recognition of the signs and the emergency response that's necessary to treat students with food allergies. And of course, we need to be able to have schools develop education for the students, the rest of the students in the school who do not have food allergies, to be able to be more supportive of those with food allergies, to help those with food allergies better manage their signs and symptoms and school day, as well as help parents of students with food allergies and those without to be able to support the school's plan for addressing the needs of students in schools. And it's not just prevention of incidences, occurrences that may lead to food allergy, anaphylaxis, and other reactions in schools, but it's also being able to respond in emergency ways to treat those who are suffering severe reactions to food allergies. And that's very easy to include and put as a part of a school's overall hazards plan.
Mm-hmm. Stefano, what do we know about risk factors for severe reactions in school-age children?
Well, I think Pete addressed some of these, but I think looking at fatality registries of food allergic individuals, the delayed use of epinephrine has been associated with at least 90% of these fatalities. So it needs to be administered right away. And of course, individuals who have had prior anaphylaxis are at increased risk, as are also students with asthma. We also can't forget about adolescents. There seems to be a high rate of fatalities in adolescents, maybe because this is an age group that takes more risks with their food allergies. I should also mention that anaphylaxis can occur to other causes, such as bee stings or exercise or medications. And about 25% of cases of where anaphylaxis is used, there was no prior known history of allergy in the child.
Mm-hmm. Are there also, Stefano, some risks from non-food exposure, things like skin and inhalation and so forth?
Yes. I mean, you can probably get reactions by that type of exposure, but studies have shown that really these are probably contributing to mild reactions. You really need to ingest the protein to get a full anaphylaxis. And, although this is the case, I mean, you could still touch something, put it in your mouth. So these kinds of situations, especially contact, cannot be disregarded.
Mm-hmm. And Pete, given the information that Stefano has shared, what are some things schools can reasonably do to be prepared and increase their responsiveness to students with food allergies?
Brent, I think there's two important things, and that is that a school needs to be able to put a plan in place prior to having had to experience a student in school with food allergies and the adverse effect that it occurs. So being prepared is better than being reactive. The second thing is I think that the plan that a school puts in place needs to involve the whole school. And that's especially the parents as a part of that plan. Parents understand the symptoms. Parents understand oftentimes the foods to avoid that will help their child. And parents can also be supportive in the overall staff understanding of food allergies so that their whole school is able to better respond.
Right. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your expertise and being part of the first segment of our program today. We appreciate it very much. And as an introduction to our next panel discussion, please watch these video clips highlighting messages from parents and children with food allergies and the importance of parent and community involvement and some other information related to food allergies.
My name is Henry, and I'm in the 4th grade at Central Elementary School. I'm allergic to tree nuts.
Henry was a little over 2.5 years old. We were out at a farm, and a friend had some trail mix with her, and Henry had some. We were driving home, and I looked in the rearview mirror, and his one eye was swollen shut, and his face was swollen up and red and breaking out in hives.
My name is Maya. I am allergic to peanuts and tree nuts and oats.
Maya was 15 months old when she had her first allergic reaction to peanuts. She was fed a peanut butter sandwich, and not even a little nibble caused a significant reaction. Her face was swollen, her face was red, her eyes were almost closed.
When the reaction occurred, I was at work, and my wife, she called me, and then she was panicking, so it sent me to panic.
I'm Amanda, and I'm allergic to peanuts, pineapple, and kiwi.
Food allergies are incredibly serious, and if you've ever experienced or witnessed someone, especially your own child, taking a bite of food and unexpectedly then not breathing or going like this because their throat is swelling, it puts a whole new light on things.
When we discovered that we had parents with children that had allergies, we immediately pulled them into a committee to help figure this out. But at the same time, we knew we had parents that were not interested in changing any of the dietary needs of children. So actually, we pulled some of those parents on the same committee. We thought that if they had a chance to dialogue with each other about the needs of children, we'd come to a better outcome. The relationship between the parent and the school is critical. We like parents to be equal participants, to, in some cases, drive the program that we do because they know their child better than anyone.
It's absolutely essential for communities to involve students and families in the schools. It becomes even more important, of course, when there are students who have special needs.
When a child comes to our doors, at public schools, we take in all children. We don't always know what allergies they may have. So you had to provide a safe environment. And so I think it starts with having the openness to talk with parents, making sure they feel welcome, the teachers, and our food service workers.
When we first started looking at this, we definitely felt polarization within the community, from those that were wanting us to ban certain foods from the schools versus those that didn't want us to ban anything from the school. And by bringing those people to the table and they could hear the stories from each other, it really helped us take the middle of the road where we were developing guidelines and not making requirements.
It's my pleasure to introduce our next panel, which will share their personal perspectives of living with food allergies and interacting with schools. Joining me here are a high school student, Alex Simcoe, and her mother, Mary Linehan. They're from the Geneva 304 schools in Illinois. Also on our panel is Chris Weiss, the Vice President of Advocacy and Governmental Relations at the Food Allergy and Anaphylaxis Network, or FAN. Chris and his colleagues at FAN frequently hear from parents of children with food allergies about their experiences in working with schools to make sure their children with food allergies will be safe. Also joining us is high school student Denny Ganal and his mother Gina. They are from the Rockwood School District in Missouri. And good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for being part of our panel. And I'd like to start with the students first, if I could, Alex and Denny. And Alex, first, you tell us about how you learned about your food allergy and what happens when you have a reaction.
Well, I found out that I was allergic to peanuts, nuts, eggs, corn and beef when I was 2 years old, and I found that out through an anaphylactic reaction. My throat closed up and I started phasing in and out of consciousness, so my parents took me to the hospital, and since then I have outgrown eggs, corn, and beef, so now I'm only allergic to peanuts and nuts, and I'm now 15.
All right, and Denny?
And I found out I was anaphylactic to peanuts and also allergic to tree nuts when I was 1, and my parents fed me peanut butter because the doctor said that he needed to fatten me up. And so I had some of that peanut butter, and my face started to swell up, my eyes started to bulge out, and I started phasing in and out of consciousness, so they rushed me to the hospital, and the doctor said if we had been 5 minutes later, I would have died. That was my last reaction.
All right, and parents, let me ask you, starting with Mary. Mary, based on your experience with schools, what worked well in your school district and what needs to be improved as far as dealing with Alex?
Well, many accommodations were needed for Alex when she was younger in elementary school because her allergies were so severe. So we had extensive accommodations made, which worked very well. Hand washing before entering the classroom, safe snacks in the classroom, a peanut-free classroom. She also had a peanut-free table at lunchtime. And even her PE teacher got involved, and if he felt that exercise equipment needed to be cleaned off, he would clean that for her. Middle school, not as many accommodations needed to be made, and high school, even less, because Alex is very self-sufficient. So all of those accommodations worked really well. I think what really needs improvement is maybe social inclusion for the food allergic children. I see a lot of social isolation, which is heartbreaking to see. These kids just want to be treated like everybody else and not excluded.
Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
I just think that education needs to be made more out there, because I find that the more that people understand a food allergy, the easier it is to work with, and the more included students are and the more friends that they make.
All right. Gina, from your perspective, tell us about your reaction.
We share many of the same experience that Mary and Alex did. One thing that we found, and I think they did too in our conversations today, was that it's really important to have a team approach with the schools, with the school board, the teachers, the administrators, the school lunch program, a team approach that is very proactive for prevention, and it is also prepared for response, emergency response. And so we had multiple meetings with all these groups. We did training for the teachers and such. And as Mary said, it declines as they get older. The need for support declines. So in elementary school, we also had the peanut-free classroom. Kids wash their hands before entering the classroom. We did not have a peanut-free school, but we did ask that kids who ate peanut products, peanut butter, that they would wash their hands after they ate before they got their sticky hands on the playground balls and the equipment. And we also asked, we had a school nurse. She or my husband or myself went on field trips with Denny. He did not ride the school bus to and from school until he was in 6th grade. Between his asthma and his allergies, the school, and we did not feel that that was a good idea. And it has, again, like Mary and Alex's experience, we have had less and less need for support from the schools, although we're in the Rockwood School District and they're extraordinarily responsive to Denny's needs. And they invited my husband, Dr. Dennis Ganal, to serve on their food allergy panel that determined the food allergy policies for the district, which was, again, that team approach.
I just want to add that education is probably the key. The more people know, probably the more helpful they become. Because when they're like ignorant to a whole subject on something, then they just kind of want to push it away. They don't want to embrace it. But when you give them the power to know about it and understand it, then they're more willing to accommodate to it and change things and alter things. So education's the key. I had a lot of friend support and family support. My brother, my parents, they were just great about it. My friends, they're always looking out for me, which is just great.
Mm-hmm. All right. Chris, what are the most frequent concerns your organization has heard from parents and students, and how do you respond to those concerns?
Sure. Well, Brett, if you look at the screen, these are some of the more common types of comments that we receive from parents throughout the country. First and foremost involves the anxiety of actually sending your child off to school. And the thing to keep in mind is that for many parents, this will be the first time where their child has actually been outside of their care. So you can imagine what an anxious time it is for many parents. Another common theme concerns who should the parents speak with first? They're worried about sending their child off to school, but they're not quite sure who at the school they need to speak with. Did they need to speak with the administration, the school nurse, the teachers? And so this is something that we can help parents with. Another common topic is the actual risk of a reaction, helping parents understand, okay, is the risk based on ingesting the allergen? Is it based on contact? Is it based on inhalation? And so this is something that we can talk parents through. Another common concern is the fact that food these days, it seems like food is everywhere at school. You've got classroom activities, you've got classroom parties and celebrations and field trips and special events and birthday parties. And so parents are very concerned that there's so much food these days at school. Another concern is the notion that schools and school personnel simply don't get it. They simply don't understand that food allergy is serious and it needs to be taken seriously. Another common concern involves the notion of legal rights, and I know that later in today's webcast we'll have an attorney who will speak to this a little bit, but over the last decade or so, the relationship between food allergy and disability laws has become strong. It's generally recognized that a life-threatening food allergy is a disability under certain laws, and so that has implications for children attending school, and we can certainly help parents with that. Another issue concerns epinephrine. We know that epinephrine is key to treating a severe reaction, and so parents are concerned with where will the epinephrine be kept, who will have access to it, who will be able to give it during an emergency. And then finally, we do, fortunately, receive a lot of calls and emails from parents who have wonderful experiences with their schools, and we always like to hear that.
Mm-hmm. So, Chris, what does your organization recommend parents do to help keep their children safe at school?
Well, we would always advise to try to maintain an open line of communication with the school, and also to understand that the food allergy management team at the school involves many people, not only the teacher and the school nurse and the administration, but also the cafeteria workers, bus drivers, coaches. And so again, understanding that managing food allergies at schools involves multiple people at the school, and to always maintain open communication with them.
Mm-hmm. Alex and Denny, I'd like to go back to you all and talk about the issue of bullying. And I don't know if you've experienced bullying at all at your school, but it can be a concern, I know, with some kids and food allergies. Have you encountered bullying, and what suggestions do you have to address this, Alex?
Well, I wasn't bullied so much by students as much as I was teachers. And in 3rd grade, my teacher left me alone in a room while the other children were going to a non-peanut-free room to receive an award for some sort of homework assignment. And I was left alone in the room unattended, and that obviously could have ended very badly, but it didn't. And we ended up having to call the school and schedule an emergency meeting because that was just unacceptable. And with students, other than having nuts thrown at me a couple of times, I haven't really experienced that much because I guess students were more scared of me than they wanted to put me down because they thought that I was some sort of freak. But it was more teachers than anything.
Mm-hmm. Denny?
Bullying has definitely been prevalent, I would say. We don't know exactly who it was, but for one instance, on the school door, they spread peanut butter all over the entire front door and wrote with their finger in the peanut butter, "Get out." And I was the only one allergic to peanuts, so it was obviously directed towards me and my family. And I've had kids flip peanut butter sandwiches on me, put peanut butter crackers in my face, constantly getting called peanut boy. That gets old. And it's just because I don't think people understand. You know, I was actually, what people need to realize is a peanut to me is like a loaded gun. That's like, you know, putting a loaded gun on my face when you hold a peanut up to me. And there needs to be like a zero tolerance policy installed. And I just don't see that happening. People are getting away with it. And, you know, if you were to do something similar to that to someone else, you know, they'd be kicked out of school. You know, there may be even other repercussions, and you just don't see that happening.
Mm-hmm. And moms, I'm sure that's very upsetting when you hear these stories of bullying, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, you know, you worry about not only the physical danger that those kind of bullying activities put Denny under and Alex and other children, but also the psychological damage that does. And that's something that we've been very concerned about over time. And when he was 8 years old, we did have him assessed by a psychologist who said that he had post-traumatic stress syndrome due to, you know, just the stress of the allergies, and I'm sure bullying tied into that.
Yeah, I would like to add that, you know, schools and other administrators and stuff need to, I feel like, provide psychological counseling and help for kids with allergies, because I feel like that's an area, especially with allergies, that is not addressed enough, and definitely there needs to be more focus to it, because I mean, I know that I'm not the only allergic kid to have experienced, you know, post-traumatic stress or depression. And, you know, there's been times where, you know, you just feel all alone and you need somebody to talk to. Mm-hmm. And so definitely psychological aspects of allergies need to be more focused, more resources and time need to be put into that.
Chris, does your organization have any recommendations to deal with this issue of bullying?
Well, Brent, as Denny said, there really needs to be a zero tolerance policy on the part of schools. And also, another thing that schools can do is to make sure that they avoid any situations where children with food allergies are in any way isolated from the rest of the children and therefore could become a target for bullies.
Mm-hmm. In your view, Chris, is it beneficial to have a peanut-free school?
Well, we haven't really seen school-wide restrictions on certain food allergens. And I think that what we've seen is you might see something like a peanut-free classroom, which is actually relatively common these days, or you may have for example, special seating arrangements in the cafeteria or in the classroom where you will either allow the presence of an allergen at a certain table. What we've heard from people is that although in theory it may sound as if it could work, what we've heard is that in practice it becomes a challenge. So for example, were you to prohibit school-wide the presence of a certain allergen, okay, does that apply to what the school serves? Does it apply to what the students bring in from home? Does it apply to what the adult staff members are eating? Does it apply to maybe offerings in vending machines? And does it also apply to events or activities held on school property during non-school hours? Remember that school buildings are often used by communities at nights and on the weekends. And then finally, another challenge concerns may contain statements. So if you were to restrict a certain allergen from the entire school campus, okay, does that then apply to may contain items?
Mm-hmm. Chris, I bet you hear from parents of students who do not have food allergies about restrictions that may be put in place in schools, and maybe some raise objections about that. How do you deal with that?
Sure, and again, I think that this all points back to helping raise awareness and helping educate parents who do not have children with food allergies, and helping them understand and realize that food allergy is serious, and that their cooperation and understanding will go a long way to help keep these kids safe.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'd like to ask the moms and students a question. How do you prevent a reaction and communicate your needs to the school, and what special accommodations are made at your school? Alex, could we start with you?
I completely avoid peanuts and nuts. Like, I don't touch them. I just don't deal with them. I sit with my friends at lunch, and generally they don't bring peanuts because they know that I'm allergic, but if they should, then they tell me, and they just don't touch me. And they keep at somewhat of a safe distance. Like, they sit across the table and not immediately next to me. And they're just very careful about it.
Mm-hmm. Mary, any comments on that?
The accommodations, Alex has mentioned to me before, in language, in their language classes, they often have food, and that's an issue that sometimes maybe it's not as addressed in high school as much as it should be. In elementary school, the accommodations were great. As I mentioned earlier, the children washed their hands before they entered the classroom. They worked off of a safe snack list. I think that what I hear often is that sometimes the parents are perceived as being overreactive if their child has a life-threatening food allergy. So I agree with Chris. Education is the key, raising awareness, just so that people have a better understanding that these children, if they accidentally come into contact with something or accidentally ingest something, they could lose their lives.
Danny and Gina?
For my peanut allergy, I'm extremely diligent in reading labels, and like fast food restaurants and other restaurants have, posed problems in the past, but restaurants are getting better at supplying menus and different alternatives for allergic people. And so I'm able to kind of work with that, and I'm always constantly reading labels. I mean, I found powdered lemonade before that may contain peanuts. And that's just a risk that I'm not going to take, and it's not worth taking. And so, I mean, you just have to read labels. And like, for example, my brother is really, really good about not bringing peanuts into the house or anything. And on Halloween, he threw away all his peanut products and stuff, and he's not even allergic, which is just really great. And my friends are really good at watching out. And typically with lunches, I don't have to worry too much about it. I just kind of sit down and do my own thing. And, I kind of keep an eye out for peanut products around me. And, people know that I'm allergic to peanuts, so they're not going to sit down right next to me and just start eating a peanut butter sandwich. And if they do, I'd move. But other than that, just reading the labels and...
Gina?
Well, Denny's extraordinarily careful and has been for quite a few years now. He took responsibility for it quite early. And one of the things that we've found, I echo Mary's thoughts when she said, people have found through the years that, we're overprotective parents, we're hyper, we're whatever. But, if I sit down and tell them the story of Denny's his anaphylactic reaction to peanuts and how I held this unconscious baby in my hands and took him to the emergency room, they understand. So it's really about the communications. They really need to understand, and it's really hard sometimes because something that they can put in their mouth every day doesn't do them any harm. One tiny bite can kill these children. So it is about communication.
It's about communication and education.
All right, on that note, we will end this segment of our program. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and, Chris, your expertise on this issue. We appreciate you being on our program very much. All right, next we're going to be transitioning to another segment, and we're going to be offering some important recommendations to our audience. But before we begin with our third panel, we have some important words from school leaders across the country about what it takes to develop and implement strategies that address food allergies in schools.
As a board member, my job is policy. So our job is to put in place the policies that will enable these youngsters to be cared for. And then, of course, it's up to the staff to carry out our policies with the regulations that they have.
Schools are a place for children, and all children need to be welcome in schools. Every child needs to feel that they're not only welcome in the school, but they have a safe environment from which to learn.
So having a food allergy program protects all students, not those who have allergies, but the other students as well. It protects them because, first of all, the students that do have allergies, we don't want them having an allergic reaction during the school day. Well, it appears it can be a very frightening experience to see a friend react to something. If we're going to be a responsible school district, then we have to make sure that all of our students are in a safe learning environment.
When looking at what you can do in a school setting for children with life-threatening allergies, I have identified 3 key things that school districts need to consider. First of all is prevention. What are the things that you can do to prevent a life-threatening reaction from happening at school? We like to be prepared. We really like to do what we call prevention activities. The more that we can set the school up as a place that's safe for the kids to be navigating through, the better off it will be because there won't be a life-threatening reaction. We didn't mandate that, for example, an entire school would be peanut-free. I know that some of the parents with children with peanut allergies wanted us to do that, but we realized pretty soon that we couldn't enforce that. That'd be a very tall order for us to be able to police peanut butter coming and going from school. So early on we said, you know what, we're not going to have any mandates, we're going to have guides that are going to be good for children. The second thing we look at is actually looking at an individual health care plan for children. Children need to have an individualized plan because every child has different allergies, different combinations of allergies, or different even responses to allergies. School districts haven't always had children with multiple health needs, and having an approach in place, a protocol, a way of managing health issues for children will really only make your job easier as we move forward into the next decade.
We don't have a nurse in every school. We have health techs, but they all operate under the supervision of a registered nurse, and those nurses are available.
The third thing that we look at is teacher education, and we really pushed education as part of our plan. And in fact, each year, every child's plan has an educational component. In working with kids with a variety of needs, that all of us become better educators. because we understand children a little bit differently. We understand the diversity that we have in our schools, and we embrace it.
Our third panel will discuss policy, procedure, and practice issues, including legal issues in developing, implementing, and evaluating food allergy plans. We have panelists who serve in various local school districts as a school board member, superintendent, health services director, school nurse, and a nutrition coordinator, in addition to an attorney at the National School Boards Association. Our guests are Kathy Ellemeyer, the health services director with the Liberty Public Schools in Missouri, Kristen Redmond, a school nurse with the Liberty Public Schools, Lori Danella, nutrition coordinator with the Lee Summit School District here in Missouri, Raymond Lechner, the superintendent of the Wilmette Public Schools in Illinois, and Russ Weasley, a school board member from the Waukee Public Schools in Iowa, and Lisa Sorinen, the senior staff attorney with the National School Boards Association. And we welcome all of you to our program. Thanks for being with us. Russ and Ray, I'd like to start with you if I could. Russ, what have you found to be the best policies and practices related to food allergies that a school district should have in place?
I think that each district should have policies in place, and ones that the parents, teachers, and staff fully understand, and that the students understand, and that it's well implemented and followed.
Mm-hmm. Ray?
Yeah, every single school system simply needs to have a comprehensive resource guide to manage life-threatening allergies in the schools. And that plan needs to be developed with community members, which include nurses, parents, dietitians, teachers, administrators, and so forth. And that plan needs to include preventative measures that the school district will follow, emergency actions, and as well as training of staff. And then we also need to build in brief periodic review of the plan as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. Ray, it's one thing to have the policies, it's something else to implement them. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a tall order actually, and each year we ask each parent with a child having a life-threatening allergy to sit down with the core team at the school, and they review the plan that they have for their child. And that is part of a training process for the immediate core team. We also identify any medical supplies that we need or any updated medical information each year. And then once we've done that, then we train. We train not only the core team, but we look at all of the team extended throughout the school, which includes bus drivers and cooks and custodians. We train the students in the classroom. We even send letters home to all the parents in the classroom to give them information about life-threatening allergies. And all of that together really makes a difference for kids.
Russ, your thoughts on implementing policies?
Much the same that he has said. Education is just a must, and it has to include all the parents and students. We also send a letter out to each parent at the beginning of the school year explaining our policy, what the policy is, and that it's expected to be followed.
Mm-hmm. Russ, how are your policies and practices monitored and evaluated in your school district?
We monitor each policy on a regular basis, especially if we get feedback from a parent or a teacher or nurse, whichever, that something's not working right. We'll look at it immediately. Otherwise, it's monitored on a 3-year process.
Ray, as a superintendent, how do you monitor?
It's similar. We have a periodic review of our overall plan, and we bring in different individuals as part of that committee so we get fresh ideas. We train staff in the schools twice a year, and then we reflect upon our practices each time we have a training.
All right. Lisa, let's turn to you. We mentioned earlier there are legal issues surrounding this, as there are with many of our issues we deal with. What steps could school districts take to be less legally vulnerable when developing and implementing policies and practices to support the safety of students with food allergies?
Well, a common controversy between schools and parents of students with food allergies is what to do about an allergy ban. Should one be done in a classroom or in the cafeteria or in the entire school environment? And occasionally this question has been litigated. Hearing officers have come to different conclusions about whether an allergy ban in an environment is required or a good idea. In some instances, hearing officers have said that allergy bans in classrooms are required. It's more likely to be required when the students are very young, a food allergy is in fact life-threatening. And when the district has exposed the student to the allergen or has been unable to get parents to cooperate with not bringing the allergen into the classroom. Other hearing officers have said it violates other students' cultural rights and other rights to eat particular foods, which to me seems a bit overreaching, but this conclusion has been come to by some hearing officers. As this group has discussed in other panels, a frequent solution to the problem of food allergies is to use allergy-free tables in the cafeteria. Particularly for younger students, the table can be washed. The student can just eat with peers who do not eat the allergens. And as students progress in age, they're more able to do what Brett described, Denny described about just sitting by their peers and monitoring their own allergies. Another legal issue that comes up is, when will school districts be liable if a student ingests an allergen? Basically, schools can be liable for the tort of negligence. Negligence has 4 elements. It has a duty of care, the duty is breached, the duty is the proximate cause of injuries and results in damages. Now, how does this relate to food allergies? Well, basically, schools have a duty to protect students from being harmed at school, and if they are harmed, schools have a duty to react and to not expose the student to the harm themselves, and then to respond. Probably a school would only be liable in the event a student died or was seriously injured. However, psychological trauma can be an injury also.
All right. Lisa, what is a 504 plan, and when should a district put together a 504 plan for a student with life-threatening food allergies, and would a written individualized health plan serve the same purpose?
The next slide discusses what a Section 504 plan is. Section 504 is a federal law which requires schools to ensure that students with disabilities are able to participate and receive the benefits of education. Most students with life-threatening food allergies are going to be covered under Section 504. A life-threatening food allergy would render a person substantially impaired in numerous activities, breathing and eating. Therefore, they would be covered by the law. Now, an individual health plan might work just as well. However, some parents feel that it doesn't have the legal teeth of a Section 504 plan and prefer it for that reason. So Section 504 plans basically have 3 key elements. The first element is to discuss how the risk of exposure will be minimized. It's a very important point. The next part of a Section 504 plan is to discuss what emergency protocols are in place in the event of an exposure. And then the training of staff, students, and parents should be discussed as part of a 504 plan. Now, these plans can have very, very diverse elements depending on a student's food allergy, its severity, what the allergen actually is. My favorite one came from an actual Section 504 plan that was litigated. In this case, the staff agreed that they would not touch a student unless they had washed their hands or had not used nut-free products.
Lisa, are there some common mistakes that districts make on 504 plans?
Yes, there are a number of common mistakes that school districts do make when setting up Section 504 plans. In particular, allergens should be discussed in every environment, from the cafeteria to the classroom to the library to computer labs. Another big mistake can be regarding training. It's not enough to say that training will be done. It should be said in the plan how often it will be done, how long it will be done, who will receive it, and what it will cover. I think the biggest problem I've seen in plans, though, and maybe the most serious, is the discussion of emergency procedures. Sometimes plans will say, if a reaction happens, administer an EpiPen. Well, who administers it? How do they determine it should be administered versus something else be done? Who is in charge of taking care of those emergency steps? It's a very key element of a plan that's often ignored. Another thing that sticks in the craw of parents, and I think for good reason, is that no accommodations are made for students on field trips. Students should not be excluded just because of allergies from field trips, and there's a lot of simple accommodations. As was mentioned earlier, having the parents or a school nurse accompany a younger student on a field trip. So those are some common mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, are there some special steps to take to protect the privacy of students?
Yes. There's a federal law called the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, commonly known as FERPA. FERPA states that personally identifiable information from student records cannot be revealed unless parents or eligible students consent. How this relates to food allergies is that, for example, it would be a violation of FERPA for a school district to send a letter to parents saying, Johnny Smith has a food allergy. Because if you're doing that, you're revealing confidential information from a student record. But FERPA can be even more tricky than that. I'll give you another example. Let's say a student has a food allergy and it's only one student in the district, and a number of people know that this student has food allergies. To write a letter and say, we have a student with a food allergy, could also reveal personally identifiable information, because most people are going to know who in fact that student is. Now, it's pretty simple for a school district to address this legal issue. What they can do is they can ask the parents of food allergic students if they will consent to having the name of their student revealed in district communications. And typically parents will agree and the issue will no longer remain.
All right. Kathy, I'd like to turn to you if we could. What are the most challenging food allergy issues facing schools, especially schools with limited health services staff, such as registered nurses?
Thank you, Brett. We do have a lot of challenges, and I'll speak to a few of those today. Expert staffing is a challenge, and it is essential for us in our district. We're privileged and honored to have a nurse in every school in our district here, and it's a challenge to be able for some districts to do that. So that is essential. We need those nurses, and we need that staffing, those experts, to be able to assess these children and to be able to care for them properly in these times of emergencies when they have exposure or prevention. And the other challenge would be sometimes parents are a challenge because, as we heard from some wonderful parents today, not all of our parents in our district are forthcoming with information, and we need that information desperately to be able to know how to care for these kids and know how to treat them. And so that can be a challenge when we're not receiving the latest lab values or the latest tests that were done or the latest information. The parents just really need to share that with us. The other challenge would be the number of food allergens that we have in our district. We have over 100 kids in our district with allergies, and the allergens are wide, and they range anywhere from cinnamon to chocolate to eggs and peanuts, of course, and red dye and latex, and there's so many allergens, and that is a challenge to address all of those and keep all of those straight in the classroom.
Kristen, what are your thoughts on schools that have sometimes limited staffing to deal with this issue?
Absolutely. It's imperative to have those trained staff available. Delegation is very much of a concern that needs to be addressed on a bigger level. One thing I think that is imperative that we have are emergency action plans that the parents and the physicians can work together to provide to the school. That plan and the people implementing that plan are only as good as the information they're provided. So it's just crucial for them to be able to provide that information so that we can have that team approach to be able to provide the safest environment for that student.
Ray, your thoughts on this issue?
All of that, and I just want to add an appeal to parents that it's absolutely critical that we are able to communicate and to educate the people that we work with, so giving us permission to do so is critical.
Kathy, how should school personnel be trained to prevent and respond to life-threatening food allergies?
Well, in our district, training is very important, and it's been talked about prior today as well. It's a non-negotiable in our district. We have to have training. It's imperative. And in our state, in the state of Missouri, in July of 2011, we will be required, all districts will be required to have a food allergy policy and procedures that each district must entail the entire policy. And that includes training. And training occurs on several levels in our district. It occurs, first of all, we use a computerized training module that addresses the signs and symptoms of allergies. It addresses what an allergy is. It addresses how to use an epinephrine autoinjector like an EpiPen. That training occurs with all of our staff that have contact with students. That includes substitutes as well, and that's very important. So that training is the first thing that happens. Then we drill down and we have training with our nurses, and our nurses train those individuals that deal very closely, like the teachers that deal with those students. And our nurses do an amazing job with that training and further training those folks. We also have stock epinephrine in each of our nurses' offices in every school in our district. And that's an important component that our state has allowed us to do that, and we have a law allowing us to have that stock epinephrine. So if we ever have students with an unknown undiagnosed allergy in our district, we as nurses can give the stock epinephrine, and it's wonderful. It's a lifeline for some of those kids. And so our training is on varied levels, and it's very important.
Lori, how important is this training?
It's very important. Our district is similar to what Kathy just said. Our building staff is all trained by our nurses, and it's at the building level. And as far as food service, we train all of our staff members. Our managers have lists of what allergens the students have that are in their buildings. We train them on cross-contamination, on how to prepare the products, on what restrictions students have in their buildings. We also train them to recognize and respond to a possible food allergy anaphylactic case. And then also cleaning and sanitizing is very important, not only in the kitchen areas, but in the cafeterias for the tables.
Yeah. Lori, what are some strategies schools have used to provide a safe lunch space in the cafeteria when students have allergies to specific foods?
Many districts provide allergen-free tables or peanut-free tables. It's also essential to discourage sharing or trading of food items, and also to ensure that the children are washing their hands before entering and after entering the cafeteria.
Ray, any strategies you've used in the cafeteria?
Yeah, we also make all of our ingredients lists available online for parents so everybody can be aware of the ingredients that the food is made of.
All right. Lori, food exists outside of the cafeterias, though, in schools, as we well know, with parties and things that go on in classrooms. What about these classroom parties and other food-involved activities?
Well, our district still allows food items to be brought in for parties and celebrations. We recommend that parents bring in items that have food labels so the teacher is aware of what's in those items. The teachers are trained on what allergens are in their classroom. And we also recommend that parents of like peanut allergy students or celiacs or different types of allergies bring in their own snacks in case there is a question of what ingredients are in that treat that's brought in.
Right. Ray, do you do anything in your district about that?
Yeah, we also try to encourage as much as possible non-food events. When we have celebrations, we can find all kinds of ways to be excited without necessarily using food. And because we're a school, we can use reading and writing elements to help with that. So we can be giving students tools that involve reading and writing. One of the things that we do on birthdays is we encourage parents to send their child to school with their favorite book, and then that book becomes a donation to the school library. And that seems to be very effective.
All right. Lori, how do you keep parents informed of foods that are restricted or allergen-free?
Our department provides a list of all the items we serve, and whether it's elementary, middle, or high school. It has all the main allergens. That is on our website, and it's also given out to the school nurses, and hard copies are kept in the cafeteria. We also have a book in our office that has copies of all of our labels, because occasionally vendors change and commodities might change if the schools receive commodities, so we keep that updated. And we also encourage parents to come in and read labels. That kind of gives them a sense of security when they can actually read the labels and see what's in the products.
We touched on this issue with the previous panel about objections that other students or parents might raise about restrictions on limits on food that are available at school. How do you deal with that, Lori?
Well, Chris addressed that, and it's hard to try to restrict items because you have such a vast variety of allergens, and you have to try to be fair and equal. I think the key is to educating the school community, educating the parents, and then also keep the communication lines open.
Kristen, how do you manage to protect the confidentiality of individual health records and balance that with the needs of students with food allergies for a protected environment?
Well, it's very important to maintain that confidentiality and, of course, protect the student's privacy. But I think it's also very important to make sure that there's the safest environment available to that student. And the need-to-know basis is the approach that we take in Liberty, and that is part of the team approach. Any student that is going to be crossing paths with another employee, staff member, whomever that might be, we want to make sure they are as informed as they can be and that they have the safest environment set up for that student.
Lori, any thoughts on that?
I agree with Kristen. It's a need-to-know basis. In our district and in the food service department, we require a medical statement from a licensed medical professional that states the allergen, how it might affect the life, substitutions, what needs to be omitted, what can be substituted. Those forms are only seen by myself and the school nurse. We keep those on file, but then I contact the parents to let them know that it's basically very important for us to pass that information on to our cafeteria staff because they're on the front lines of serving the food. So we get that permission from them, and we also flag the student's account. So when they go through to the cashier, screen comes up that states what their allergen is, and that cashier can kind of do the final scan and make sure that student doesn't have anything on their tray they shouldn't have.
All right, I'd like to ask each of you the following question. From your experiences, what is one key recommendation and one lesson learned that you can offer to other school districts in developing, implementing, or evaluating food allergy policies and practices? Lisa?
My recommendation is, if you haven't done this already, to plan, and plan on 2 levels. Plan for the students you know have life-threatening food allergies, and plan for the students you don't know have life-threatening food allergies. And a key part of that plan from a legal perspective is to have someone who is ready, willing, able, and knowledgeable to administer an EpiPen if necessary. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you go to FAN's website, they have statewide guidance from, I would say, about 8 states that talk about individual planning and planning overall.
All right. Russ?
Mine would be, if you're a school board member, don't hesitate to put policies in place that help protect our children. A good place to start would be a building advisory team where you could have parents of children with allergies and non-allergies meet with the appropriate staff to come up with a plan that could be presented to the school board. And then we also have a program that's Kids Monitor Kids, where friends of children with allergens help them to get through so that by 5th grade they're self-monitoring and can control their own destiny.
All right. Ray?
I think it's critical not to make policies based on fear, because fear divides communities. I think it's important to embrace differences and make schools a place that welcomes every child every day.
Lori?
I think communication, teamwork, and education are 3 key things that need to be thought about when these policies are being formulated. It takes everyone to be successful. You should have principals, various administrators, parents, food service, even custodians, bus drivers. Everybody deals with the children, and it takes everybody to be a team and to make it successful.
All right, Kristen?
To build on what all of these great answers have been, education I think is key, and I think it needs to become part of the culture of the community as well as the school. It builds tolerance and understanding, and I think one lesson learned is to not forget that as part of the team approach, the child's voice needs to be heard, and to be able to hear their feedback and have an understanding of their input on the plan is also very important.
Kathy?
And I would also say consistency from building to building district-wide is very, very important in addressing these issues. Also know that your policies and procedures are only as strong as your weakest link, so that weak link needs to be strong. There's no room for error there. Education and communication are just really, really the key in building those strong links.
All right, we have just a few minutes left in our segment of our program, and we have had lots of questions come in from folks all around the country watching our webcast today. And I'd like to ask you one that's come in from a viewer. The question is, currently we have a no food allowed outside the cafeteria policy. Parents are complaining because some children go long periods of time without eating. How can we maintain the safety of students with LTA and provide snacks to those who need them in the classroom? Ray, you want to try to tackle that one?
Yeah, based on my earlier comments, you can probably guess what I'm going to say, but I don't think such a policy is a good idea. I don't think it's wise to make food the enemy. Restrictive policies can be divisive. In our school system, we have successfully managed life-threatening allergies for years without needing such a policy.
Any thoughts on that, Russ?
I think one thing our school district does for the older students when they have a late lunch is they're given an extra 10 minutes between two classes early in the morning so they can get a snack in the cafeteria.
All right. Another question that's been sent in by a viewer. This is from Dan in South Carolina. And we were talking about training earlier, training of staff, and he asks, is there a standardized training program used? If so, what program is used, or do you have to come up with that on your own? Tell us about your training.
We use in our district, it's a very easy website to go to. It's safeschools.com, and that's what we use. And a portion of their training, there's a 10-minute epinephrine and food allergy training on there. We love that. That's a starting point. That does not address the training that is done when the nurses train at the building level as well with individual teachers. I'm certain that FAN on their website would have many resources for training in addition to the NASN website, National Association for School Nurses. There's many resources like that for training available.
Any other thoughts on training?
Just want to add that there are lots of resources like that, and we've customized training for every single individual, from custodians to bus drivers to cafeteria workers and so forth, including students with allergies, because it's critical for children with allergies to learn independence. You heard some great examples here today about how children have taken on the management of their allergies themselves, and that's critical.
All right. Another question from a viewer, and this one's for you, Lisa. For the lawyer, it says. What law requires the school to have the medical records aside from the information from the doctor in the diagnosis? Why and for what purpose must they have the numbers that Kathy spoke of?
I don't know that any law requires school districts to have any particular records. However, once they do have records, those records are covered by the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Obviously, as part of deciding what to do with a student who suffers from a life-threatening food allergy, gathering medical records, gathering information for doctors is a wise idea. I don't know that it's per se required. Any other thoughts?
Just to address one portion of that, there was some discussion earlier in the panel about perceived allergy versus a diagnosed allergy. So I think it's imperative that we have the physician documentation that would usually come in the form of a food allergy action plan, that's the documentation. I don't know if that's what they're referring to necessarily, but that's the documentation that we would like to see in the district level.
All right. Panelists, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your expertise during this segment of our program. We appreciate it very much. Well, there's been a wealth of information presented to you, including success stories from several school districts to get you started or perhaps strengthening the plans you already have in place. Here are some additional words from school leaders, and we'll share some information on resources that may be of interest to you in just a minute.
Schools will say, as ours started out thinking, it's going to cost us a lot to make adjustments. But actually, in the end, it didn't cost us a lot, and a lot of people got educated. So we're able to provide an environment that is safe of allergens for our food allergy students as well as their peers. And we accomplished that with very little resources, and we're maintaining it with even less resources, so we know it can be done.
I wouldn't take extreme positions. You're going to get positions from both sides indicating that you should ban foods or that you should not ban foods. And there's always a middle ground that everybody can live with. And we have had great success with that because our guidelines are just that. They're guidelines. And people embrace them and they use them. But they're not policy that says that we require one thing or another. For other school districts, the first impression is we don't know that we can handle this. And that is okay, because we felt the same way. We weren't sure we could handle it, but know that you can handle it and literally move forward, dive into getting the research that you need. The good thing is that there's a lot of stuff available to school districts right now.
All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce Amanda Martinez. She is the Project Associate for Coordinated School Health with the National School Boards Association. Amanda?
Thank you all for joining us here today. I'm going to show you a few resources that are already available or will soon be available to assist schools in addressing food allergies. The first is the National School Boards Association School Health Programs website. It is shown here. A key resource that I'm hoping you will be aware of is our Food Allergy and Food Safety 101 packet. It's a packet that contains information on research, data summaries, policy and practice guidance, and other internet resources related to these two topics. It is available online and in print by request by accessing this website. The next is a publication that is under development at NSBA entitled Safe at School and Ready to Learn, a comprehensive policy guide for protecting students with life-threatening food allergies. This is the cover. It's under development, expected to be published in 2011. It's targeted to school boards and other administrators and other education leaders. This is the resource you should be aware of. This is Food Allergy and Anaphylaxis Network's website, www.foodallergy.org, and it's a one-stop resource for anything related to food allergies. Some of the key resources that I want to highlight here is a food allergy action plan, for instance. In many schools, they use this food allergy action plan as an emergency care plan for dealing with food allergies. FAN is also developing guidance for parents. It's organized around these topic areas, and that guidance is anticipated to be published in 2011 as well. Like NSBA and FAN, the National Association of School Nurses receives funding from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, specifically the Division of Adolescent and School Health, to address food allergies, and this is NASN's website. These are some resources that NASN has developed around food allergies and anaphylaxis. They are hyperlinked, so they link to actual resources. Some of these are the anaphylaxis webpage, their position statement, a radio show about food allergies, and an online continuing education program for school nurses. And lastly, this is CDC's Division of Adolescent and School Health website. Coming in 2011 is a guide that they are going to be developing, and it's national recommendations and guidance. That guide is called CDC's Managing Students with Food Allergies in Schools. And we will distribute these resources to you electronically and also post them to the NSBA and ESGN websites.
All right, Amanda, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time for our program today. I want to thank all of our panelists, and we thank you as viewers for joining us today. We want you to know that we want to know what you think of this program, and please look for an email from the National School Boards Association with an evaluation form and provide us with your input. And please don't forget that you'll be sent access to resources related to food allergy policy and practice in schools that will be posted on NSBA's and ESGN's websites for you to download for later reference. This program has been a production of the National School Boards Association in cooperation with the Education Solutions Global Network with support from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Division of Adolescent and School Health. So long from Columbia, Missouri.